Welcome to Hellbilly, the darker side of Appalachia. Just a friendly reminder not to whistle, sing, or scream in the darkness, because you might find yourself surrounded by a skinwalker, or someone who might be there to steal your catalytic converter or some copper wire. Either way, it won't be pleasant. Tonight, on our episode, we are going to talk about how people came here on a boat, most likely, because in 1763, they did not have planes or trains, so there's that. So, without further ado, here we go. As mentioned in our last episode, immigrants came from England, Scotland, Ireland, and Germany. And, I sit here and I ponder to myself and I think, what would it have been like to them? And then I think they might be asking themselves, how did I arrive in this place? This isn't my mediocre farmland. This isn't my peasant spouse. Don't sue me, David Byrne. It's just a joke. But either way, they ended up here in Central Appalachia, the heartland of Appalachia. And I'm assuming they skipped Ellis Island because Ellis Island I don't think existed during this time period. They just kind of hopped a ship and here they are. If they survived at all, because ships those days were not fantastic. Not really that fantastic right now if y'all have seen Poop Cruise. We were not in the thick of the gimme you're tired, you're poor and all of that. We were just kind of accepting bodies and we were like, yes, just give me your bodies and we'll do with them what we will. And that was the truth of it. It was kind of a free-for-all, not gonna lie. So people jumped ship, came here, ended up all up and down the coast, and, migrated inward and inward and inward and inward until they reached the mountains. And then they were like, holy fuck, what have I done? And that's a good question, because I would have said that myself if I had been them, because those things are huge and dense. And now we reach 1763 and the proclamation, also known as congratulations, you can't go west. So by my research, this occurred after the French and Indian War, and the British were like, hey, have some tea and some crumpets, and also you're stuck here because, here's a line and you can't cross it. And the line is the mountain range, and we want you to stay here. And we're not gonna do that because we just don't want you to. So sorry about your luck, guys. You all came over here on a boat, survived scurvy and rats, and God knows what else happens on boats or happened on boats back in the day. I'm sure it was really, really bad. Again, counselor, not an historian. But, welcome to Appalachia Central. But you can't go further. And so the people were probably like, oh, dude, what the fuck, bro? What if we want to? And the British were like, no, we drew a line. We drew a line. And civilized folk, you don't cross that line. And people were like, listen, and you can't tell me what to do. So some of them crossed it. And they fucked around and found out that when you cross the Appalachian Mountains, it is once again dense and vegetative and rough. And they met with, the indigenous people, and some of them were nice, and some of them were rightfully very not nice. And I say that again, rightfully not nice. Don't blame them one bit. And some of them made it across, and some of them very likely didn't. Ultimately, what occurred is that a good portion of these people, such as the Scots, Irish, and the German immigrants, were squeezed out of better land and better treatment. Shocker. And when they did ultimately cross, if they survived, they found no infrastructure, lots of violence, like I mentioned, occupied land, and they didn't even have anyone to complain to. Can you believe it? No Karens had a manager with whom to contact. And could you imagine it back then? Could you honestly be like, can I talk to your manager? I'd like to talk to a manager about the treatment I'm getting while you're, being scalped. Be really weird. At the end of the day, British washed the hands of it, I suppose. At least that's my understanding is, you crossed it. You crossed your line. We're not going to take care of you. Fare thee well, dink. And on they went. And again, bear in mind, the American Revolutionary War was ongoing during this part, so it's not like they were, like, I guess, overly concerned about it. You know, people running through the woods, doing what they do, asking to speak to managers and getting scalped and meeting up with new people and maybe actually having a good life with really good people that they met. You know, not all of the indigenous people were unfriendly to people. And that's an important thing to remember too, is that history villainizes the indigenous people and makes them out to be savages, and they were not. If somebody was coming for your land, the land that you owned, you'd fight for it too. They had a right. I don't blame them. So onward and upward, friends. What is a settler to do when all is said and done? I can tell you, it is not putting shiplap in a cabin. No, it's making do. And that is going to be something that you hear about a lot from me throughout this podcast, especially every season. It's making do. You got a system here, and the system is broken. You're on your own. You have no government, no trade. You got soil that you don't know how to farm that basically is looking at you like Jim Bob down at the 7-Eleven and spitting backer juice on the floor and saying, "Hold my beer." Tension all around you with different people, including the people that, you know, you're living with. It's a free-for-all. It's basically the Appalachian revolutionary version of the Thunderdome. Welcome to hell, Billy. But somehow they survive, as people are wont to do. And time goes on, and we zip, 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 zip in our magic little time machine into the Industrial Revolution. And I think it's important to note that the Industrial Revolution is important because a lot of things changed between that era and this one. Science, technology, a whole host of things changed. And it wasn't like land suddenly became valuable because, look, it's valuable. It's because we learned that things were valuable based upon growing education. And because of that, people started recognizing the value within the land and the mountains, such as timber, iron ore, and coal. So what was once just a buffer between one place and another, and a place to keep people isolated, became not only a place to keep people isolated, but a place to keep people isolated while also taking their resources, timber, iron ore, and coal. Oh, well, would you look at that? So it's no longer too remote and it's no longer too dangerous, or it is, but because of education and steam powered engines and so on and so forth, and, you know, being able to construct things from iron and, you know, all of the technological advances that we have made or had made since the time period well before that, we had been able to navigate the terrain such that we could build railroads, not pave the way. Well, yes, pave the way. That is a good term. Pave the way through the mountains using dynamite and create tunnels and knock down trees and make it such that we could carry back these resources from one place to the other. So businessmen start pouring into the Appalachian Mountains, Central Appalachia, with contracts to people that they can't read because the majority of them had never been taught to read. Education was sparse. Not for everybody, but for a good majority of them, education was sparse because for the most part, they were cut off and isolated from a lot of the rest of the country. And also, shit was just taken from them. People came in there with money and they were just like, oh, hey, you know what? I want this. This is mine. Which, in today's terms, we call that thievery. I don't know why, you know, our leaders haven't figured that out yet because they still do it. But you know what? Here's looking at you, kids. But anyway, they show up with contracts that read like, here, sign to accidentally sell your future. And people are like, Okay. And they're like, we're going to give you such and such an amount of money, which is undervalued if you just give us your property. And it sounds like a great idea, except that they don't understand that their property is worth well more than what they're being offered because of, again, lack of education. They have no legal representation. And they're just looking at the immediacy of their survival. I have no food. I am struggling. I need money. I got like 15 children. I'm overshooting it a bit, but you know what I mean. I got a lot of kids to feed and we're struggling here. Cool. All right, man. I'll take this deal. So once again, we have the rich man taking advantage of the poor man. And I'm going to stop here for a second and point out that I am not a friend of capitalism. And if you are a friend of capitalism, this is probably not the podcast for you. Just gonna lay that there. Big companies come in, start taking down timber, mining for iron ore, mining for coal, and they need bodies. And the bodies are the people that live there. So they go to work, which is the introduction of wage labor. And I guarantee you, they're not getting paid minimum wage, and they're certainly not getting paid way above minimum wage. That's a joke. They are being controlled by their company. They are moving from what once was autonomy. Because remember, prior to this, they farmed the land, they lived the land, they existed on the land, and now they have no control over the land because they sold it. So they move from autonomy to control. It's like drawing a line once again and saying, don't cross this. This land that was once yours is now ours, but worse this time. Because the land that was once yours, that is now ours, is going to break you in more ways than one. It's going to kill you. So companies take over housing, stores. People are paying in scrip, which means that they have to go and purchase things from the company's stores, not with money, but with script. Everything in the community is tethered to one employer. So it's basically like, hey, if Walmart comes in and takes over your community and you have to work for Walmart and you don't get paid with money, you get paid in like Walmart credit. And that's what you get. You can't go and spend Walmart credit at like Food City. You have to buy everything from Walmart, and Walmart owns your house. So if Walmart's like, I want to jack up the rent on your house because it can, you can't go to a bank and get a loan because Walmart is the bank. You're kind of screwed. It's a mess. It's worse than a mess. It's insidious, to be fair. Even my dog agrees, if you can hear him. To make things interesting, they start bringing in other people. They start bringing in people from the far south. They're doing this as a way to create division, to increase distrust. And it is a distrust that people to this day in Appalachia still exists. Because one of the things that I noticed when I started doing this podcast is that there is a discrepancy in who people trust. And it starts here. And right as this was happening, one of the major events in American history occurs. And we think of it primarily in the Great Plains, but we don't always flip over to Central Appalachia when we think about it. And it's the Great Depression. All of a sudden, everything stops. Coal, trees, iron, everything. Boom. Done. No money, no savings, no alternative economy, no scripts, nothing. Everything's still there. People's still there. There's no income. There's just people and land. And the thing about people, the Appalachian people that I know, is that, once again, if we return back through history, we know is that they are resilient. We didn't survive this long through so much hell just to give up. So they take what they have and they make do. They make onion and peanut butter sandwiches. They use the land and they farm what they can. I remember my grandma, and I know I don't think they had country crock back in the day, but I do remember her learning to save all of the containers that things came in to use as storage. So I never knew when I went into the fucking refrigerator if I was going to get butter or peas or corn or mashed potatoes. I didn't know what the hell I was going to get when I opened the country crock. Because she would be like, go give me some butter. And I was like, where the fuck's the butter? And she's like, it's in the country crock. And I'm like, you've got like 7. What do you want? But that's what she had to do. They had to use every single thing they could to survive. And that's how they survived. They made do because they lost access to the stores because the companies were gone. Some lost access to housing because the houses belonged to the company. And they lost access to a lot of stability because, you know what? The stability, to a point, relied on the company. Now, here's the caveat. It never really relied on any of that. There's a reason why stubbornness is attached to the Appalachian people. We don't trust because we're stubborn. And if this hasn't explained to you why, I don't know how much more I can give you. But you know what? We'll continue. Immigration to the Appalachian Mountains took time. It started early. It was controlled. It was measured. It was purposeful. It was cruel, but it was misguided and misled in so much as they did not think through the tenacity of the people that came there. They did not think through the people who said, hold my beer, I will make do. They did not think through the people who said, black lung is better than my family doing without. They did not think through the people who said, onion and peanut butter sandwiches will fill your stomach and apparently oddly taste good. I haven't tried one yet, but I've heard. Because what really matters is that you are full. Now get your ass to school. That rhymed. They did not think through that you can isolate a people who will then go on to create a community. That I said on the first episode is basically a country in and of itself. So keep that in mind as we move forward, because there's a lot to be said there about how we approach things, because we don't always approach them in the best way. We weren't always taught. We were left to our own devices without help, and we had to learn on our own. And those ways were not always the right, air quote, ways. Alcohol and drug use were rampant. Prostitution, sex for sale, all of that rampant. And I don't kink shame here, FYI. No judgment on my part. I'm just saying, people got to do what they got to do to get by. It's not always an easy life. So, thank y'all for listening to Hellbilly and Darker Side of Appalachia. I think next episode we will dive a little deeper into coal, the labor wars, and what happens when people finally get sick and tired of being sick and tired and being managed like inventory instead of like people. Kind of like what's happening right now, but I'm just saying. And I'll give you a spoiler, they don't stay quiet forever. Kind of like what's happening right now. Y'all have a good one. This has been a Strummer's Mom production. Thanks, Frank.